right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Xalient Talks. We're going to do a field update today where we tune in with our field CTOs. We got Jos, Akkermans, and DJ Morimanno.
Hey there.
And so our goal today is to talk through some of and get their perspectives on some of the shifts that we're seeing in the market that are shaping identity-driven security and networking. And today we have a pretty exciting topic. I think we both have recently came from, one of the big conferences out there, which was CyberArk's conference. And one of the interesting things there was we learned of a few things, like number one, the change in name. So now CyberArk is no longer CyberArk. We have a new name. So let's welcome Jos and DJ, and let's just jump right in. So you were there. You heard the announcement. What was your first reaction?
Yeah, well, of course, CyberArk is a name. It's a brand. It's a brand identity. And I think in the security world, it's like Apple or Microsoft, and in the security world, it's CyberArk. But it's a lot more than a name. And of course, for a lot of people, it was a kind of emotional moment that it changed it, that it is part of Palo now and that it is gone. But it's not gone. It's stronger than ever. And I think most people realize that it's just a name. And if you look at the rest of the portfolio from Strada, Cortex, Prisma, from the Palo portfolio, CyberArk doesn't fit. So you have to have a name that blends in and fits in their brand. And I think they did pretty well with Idira. Most people like it, people don't like it. And in about a year's time, nobody knows any better than just Idira. So it's just a name. I think the vision, where they're heading and how they're doing things, I think that's a lot more ahead of us and their vision. I think that's a lot more exciting than just the name change. But that's my opinion.
Okay.
DJ.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I mean, I've been around CyberArk since, they came to the States, the United States. And so a long time. And it was a very kind of a bittersweet thing being so closely related to seeing the growth and the maturity of CyberArk. And then all of a sudden, what is CyberArk is now, at least initially, like, oh, it's gone, it's changed, it's different. And most people don't take well to change initially, right? And the immediate knee-jerk reaction at the conference is, people don't like it, and it's what does this mean? And confusion was the first thing. But the vision, what's the idea? And I think as we've seen Palo start to break out what that looks like, it's a pretty solid direction in bringing identity into the core of their overall platform and understanding the importance of identity in the overall ecosystem of cybersecurity. And so that motion, I think, is over time going to prove out some things. I think some things are going to fall out. I do think that initial reaction to the name change was a lot. It was a very emotional moment, I think, for a lot of people, and it was a scary moment for others because they said, "Hey, we've been around for years. What does this mean for us?" Because again, that's a knee-jerk reaction. People hear things and they respond in real time. But I do think I agree with Jos that at the end of the day, it's a name, but there's meaning behind that name, and as long as we don't lose the characteristics of what made CyberArk as good as they were in the process, that's the important part, right? Don't lose the personality and with the change of name, the change of identity. But yeah, I think we could probably circle back on this topic because I do think that, you could argue both sides, the value of the name staying the same, the value of the name changing, but just like this industry, like change is inevitable one way or another.
Sure, but there's obviously a reason they did it. And do you think that the reasons that they did it, that those are going to make a difference or not? Or is it just really just a name change, move on? There's nothing to it other than it's...
Yeah. So I'll give you my take on that real quick. I think the rationale for changing the name was kind of two-pronged. It's a two-pronged approach, right? We've seen this evolution of privileged access management, or PAM, over the last about 5-ish years into this more modern direction for PAM. This more, things are more ephemeral. Now there's more non-carbon-based life forms. There's this new stuff and new capabilities. And it's not that CyberArk wasn't moving in that direction already, But there was especially in the States, there was a little bit of a stigma that, CyberArk's an old player, right? It only plays in the old world. It's a very traditional, it's not doing these modern things. So I do think a name change is one of the ways to kind of put a line in the sand to say, this is new. We're going forward. Not that we are going to abandon the past, but we need people to look at this from a new perspective and disconnect the fact that this is just a PAM, volts, and it's beyond that. And it has been beyond that for years, but there's been a perception in the market that, they're the old players and they only work in the old world, and that name change is a great way to flip it. There's other ways to do that, but that is a very drastic and quick way to do that and get a new perspective. So I do think that rationale is at least solid. The other prong of that and the rationale of that is just simply making it work in the Palo ecosystem. It's a very big ecosystem, lots of products, large portfolio, and it didn't natively as is fit in that portfolio. Although the story of what they wanted to tell around, the secure networking, the analytics, and the identity, and bringing all this stuff together was good. But to make that work, it has to have a place in the story. And I think the renaming is one thing, but then the restructuring of the product behind the name to fit the portfolio was that second prong. So that's my kind of view on that world.
Yeah, I also think that it is, the vision of Palo is also the platformization. That there are too many tools around, and then they're all smaller tools, larger tools, and everybody does something, and none of them does it completely. And combined, you can have something. And 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there was the best of breed scenarios. You want to have the best product, and you want the best of that, the best of that. But there are so many tools. It's you can't have everything anymore. So platformization is something that a lot of organizations are aiming for. It saves a lot of time in the management, in the vendor management, in the procurement, in managing the environment. And I think that is one of the larger visions from Palo, that they want to have a platform. And if you use the old name and you have the rest of it in another name, it will never be a platform. It will be Palo and CyberArk. And now it is going to be a platform. And this is just a name. And the platformization thought and vision is well behind it. But I think you need to change the name to be in the portfolio and to make sure that there's one voice, one platform, one security solution for a lot of things in the organization.
Wow, that's great. That's great insight. Thanks, Jos. An interesting thought. I'd love to hear your take on it. But obviously, Palo's acquisition and the bringing those things together, there's a little bit of a parallel to the Xalient story as well, from a network security and identity and bringing those things together. Any thoughts on the convergence of those things from a first of all, just from the principles of it by bringing them all together, and then we can go deeper into platformization itself and what's the reality and how close are we to having a real ability to do this modern identities work in a single platform. So 2 questions there, but first let's talk about the Xalient, the parallels.
Yeah, I think the parallels are pretty strong, but I'll take it back a little bit further. Both Jos and I, obviously we came from other organizations that were acquired by Xalient to fulfill that vision, right? We both came from a very identity-centric series of organizations, and the idea was Xalient, who's a leader in that secure networking, that edge when it comes to services. They saw a shift in the market quite a few years ago that identity is more and more at the key of a strong, mature cyber program. And it also is not only the key, but it's the platform in which other areas of cyber can mature as well. So they obviously came out and acquired both of the companies that Jos and I had come from. But when we look at then the structure in which we have our own portfolio, right, and we look at how we're looking at the identity security space, and then we're looking at the secure networking space, and then we're looking at what we refer to as kind of the foundational capabilities of cyber overall, they all have an interconnectability and an interdependency on each other. So we looked at that and we said, hey, we need to be able to not only tell this story, but be able to serve this story for our clients. And one of the things that makes that possible is obviously having technology that can back that up and technology that can make that possible. So we were a little ahead of that, and we were watching the market, and obviously the Palo announcement of the purchase of CyberArk was kind of a proof of the story, the proof of the direction in the market, because they did basically just that. They had that edge, that boundary, the analytics, the basics of cyber. They had all these pieces, and one of the massive holes in that story for them was identity, in particular privileged identity. The governance around these identities, these series of access entitlements and all the above. So they brought that in, and it was kind of a little bit of a shock to people that weren't paying attention to the market. But those paying attention to the market, such as we were, it was more of a justification moment. And since then, even more proof is others have kind of started to follow a very similar structure as Palo. So I think Palo is definitely leading and probably will be the leader as far as that story and that narrative for a while. So that mirrors that very, very well. I'd like to circle back on the reality of the platformization, but I think before we go there, I think I'll kind of hand it over to Jos to see what he thinks of the first question, because I think the two questions are two different topics in themselves.
Yeah. And I think like DJ mentioned, we both came from a different company. We got acquired by Xalient, and the company where I'm from the Benelux region. About 12, 13 years ago, we already had our underline. It was identity-driven security. And even before that, we were working in my previous company. We were working on making sure that your security environment, your SOC, your SIEM is identity aware. Your service management relates to all your components and all your identities and who has access to what in your environment. So it's not new, especially not for us. And we got acquired by Xalient to speed up our vision of identity-driven security and identity-centric security, identity-aware security. And a lot of organizations use that line and use that vision. And I think as Xalient, we are making that happen. And with an organization and an acquisition from Palo Alto to CyberArk, I think we've got one really strong brand in our vision. So I was really keen to hear that it was a Palo Alto company that bought CyberArk, because I think that has no end. It's just starting now.
From a pure technical perspective, I think the reality, if you were to move into a full platform to provide identity, end-to-end centric security, most of that, not all of that program could be served by a well-defined platform today. There are a few platforms out there, Palo obviously kind of having a very large set of capabilities. But I look at it more of like a toolbox, right? It's a toolbox of certain very specific tools. Not every one of those tools in your toolbox can do every job, but you need all the tools to perform typically larger works, larger accomplishments. So from a pure technical perspective, I think we get one answer. From a practicality, so capability and practicality are two different things for me. From a practicality perspective, an organization buying into the story of a platform and moving into an end-to-end platform, I don't see an organization ever doing that 100%. I do see organizations doing that maybe for the majority of their solutions, maybe even closer to that 100%, but never fully 100%. Because there is, and Jos mentioned about, the era we were in quite a ways ago was this best of breed. And the era, at least in the States, we moved in from that was a best fit. Like we moved from best of breed to best fit. And what that drove is a plethora of tools for multiple things. Now I think we have a combination where find the platform that maybe fulfills the majority of what you need. And then those edge cases, don't try to cram it into the platform. Still go after a best fit for those edge cases to get the most value. So I think there's obviously maturity in this space, and I don't ever try to speak in absolutes because I don't personally believe there's ever anything that is truly an absolute. There's always an exception to every rule in every scenario. But I do think practicality and from a technical perspective, it can be done. Yes, today that ability is there. The direction of these vendors is there. They're all moving. The market is moving in this direction. Actually, the probability of an organization buying into that story, 100%, where I have a platform, I think that's a little bit of a far-fetched to say that will happen, but I do see organizations moving into the majority of their program to a platform, and then those edge cases, those specialized use cases, those critical systems may still be segmented, and that could be from a comfortability perspective or resiliency perspective. There could be multiple reasons of rationale. But the reality is, my personal opinion, no organization will buy into a platform 100% for all use cases.
Yeah. Good. Jos, your take?
I absolutely agree. An organization will never be 100% one platform, and that's it. We've got one contract, one vendor, and now we're all safe. It's never going to happen. But I do know that a lot of organizations are having difficulties with the enormous amount of suppliers that they have and the enormous amount of tools they have to manage with all different interfaces. All different people need to manage it, and that's a real hassle. And managed services, SaaS makes it a bit easier, but in the end, as an organization, you have to manage it. You have to be certified in a gazillion different tools, and having one platform with one overview, its simplicity will also provide security. So maybe you can have the best tools, but the complexity of all the best tools, that will decrease your amount of security simply because it's too complex. And if you can make it simple and manageable, I think in the mid 2000s, the millenniums, everybody had a SIEM. They all bought a SIEM, and it generated an enormous amount of log entries, and nobody had the capabilities to look at it. So you weren't making yourself safe. You weren't making your organization safe. You bought a SIEM. Enabling it, making it happen, doing the follow-up, that's a lot more difficult. And I think there are a lot of organizations have a lot of tools and not having the efficiency of all the tools. So they can either have all the efficiency to the maximum level, and then they're definitely secure, or just have one platform and make sure that it's secure and easy to manage and integrated. And are we there yet? Absolutely not.
Right.
It doesn't even exist in PowerPoint. We're that far behind. But they will get there.
Yeah.
Give it a year and they will get there. They will bring their interface to one. They will make sure their AI engines are combined, that their dashboards are combined. And that's all work that an organization doesn't have to do itself. And that makes it easier. And looks and feels are the same. So I think a lot of organizations strive to the platformization, and it can be really beneficial. And I absolutely agree. No organization will be 100% one platform. That will never happen.
Let's jump back in a little bit specific to Idira and some of the themes that came out of the conference itself, or at least the product roadmap, et cetera. One of the things that was talked about quite a bit was managing basically all identities, that this is the new era, and that it's going to take on human identities, machine identities, and agentic AI identities. Comments on what you heard, what you learned, what the reality is, what the vision is, and just your take on that specific area of focus.
So I do agree that an organization needs to have visibility, observability of all types of identities, whether they're carbon-based life forms, whether they're machines, whether they're digital coworkers, governed agents, whatever they are, whether they live in the shadows or they're in the spotlight. At a minimum, every organization needs to know that they're there and what they're doing, who they belong to, what process and service is accountable for them, what individual potentially is accountable for them. I think the reality of seeing what's there is pretty doable. I think a lot of people kind of think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that's going on here. I do think there's a lot of stretching of the truth of capabilities when we get beyond visibility, but there are multiple ways in which you can discover what's in your environment. And we're at an inflection point where technology, I actually think, is almost outpacing some of the use cases, because people don't know the strategy and how to manage these non-humans and how to think about them and what they're doing. And so they're struggling of what to do. And a lot of the vendors in the industry and Palo in particular are kind of almost outpacing some of the use cases, but it's in that initial realm of visibility, observability, and in inventorying what's there. The classification of identities, I think, is a variable, because a lot of organizations still struggle with that, even with humans, because, you know, what do we, is an AD account considered an identity, or is an identity the individual and accounts are tied to them? Like, these are things that people are still surprisingly struggling with to kind of comprehend, even though there's been best practices and frameworks to follow for decades in that space. So there's that. Speaking of frameworks and guidelines and regulations, they're still being formed around how to manage all of these non-humans and what to do with them and what types and what categories. I actually have some very strong beliefs as to what those categorizations should be, but that's probably a topic for another another conversation. But that being said, I do think it is not far-fetched to be able to answer the question, what do you have in your environment? Who has it? Who's accountable for it? What is it doing? Where things get a little bit tricky is none of those actually answer the most important question, in particular when we get around agentic, is the intent of what it's doing, not the access it has to do something, but why did it do the thing it did with that access? That's when we get into the realm of maybe we can't answer that yet. Maybe their capabilities aren't quite there yet. Maybe they are in pockets. And then moving to full governance is obviously possible in parts. So the fulfillment of the industry from a technical and capability perspective, I think, is slightly outpacing where people are today, because people are still struggling what to do. I do think that will change over the course of the next couple of years as solid frameworks emerge and proper guidance is put out there. But the industry can't stay where it's at. It has to move beyond where it is today and move in to the true capability of real governance. And governance for a non-human, different types of non-human, can't be the same as humans, even though it's the same outcome. The process needs to be a little different, and the rationale needs to be a little different. But I'll pause there, because you're going to start getting me on a tangent.
Yeah, well, I think it's I think it's quite simple. And there are a lot of categories that DJ mentioned, and absolutely all agree. But if you look at it, humans been there. If you compare it, and I like talking in metaphors, it makes it understandable. Humans been there for a long time, and you can compare the normal machine identities to your kitchen appliances, to your blender, your microwave, your oven. It does something. It does one thing, and that's it. Agentic AI is like your self-driving car. It takes autonomous decisions in how to drive, where to drive, go left, go right, stop or not stop. So it's a different era. And if you look at the normal regulation, there's no regulation. There's regulation about your appliances, about how safe it is. And your self-driving car is even more certifications. The law needs to change for your self-driving car. And if you compare that to your humans, I think that we've covered that. You know, we've got AD, we've got discovery, we've covered that. That's okay now. Machine identities, I think most organizations got that pretty much covered. Tools are around there for a long time. You got your asset management, you've got your discovery capabilities for all your service accounts and your certificates and managing the life cycles. They've been doing that for quite a long time. And now there's the agentic AI, your self-driving car, and knowing where it has access to, knowing what it can do. Why did it use that API? Why did it use that? We're not there yet. And I think if you wait for it, then you're too late. So you have to start thinking about it right now. And if you're still busy with your human identities and managing your service accounts and your machine identities, you're a bit late. You hurry up. Because we haven't got the time to wait. Then if you look at what AI can do and the new threat landscape, I think that's also an entire different topic that we can talk about for a really long time. But the threat landscape changes enormously. So, and it's there, and people are using it and will be using it. So you can't wait anymore. I think that's the major difference.
Yeah. So don't wait. But what I'm hearing is that the pieces that are ready now are across multiple areas, and especially this came out in the Idira conferences, this idea of discover, control, and at least govern, or the beginning of governing, if you will, is part of the let's get that started. Let's get your all of your identities, all times at least brought in, cataloged, assign some ownership. That's kind of a step one, no matter what. Before you get into step two, regarding that deeper governance of the why and how, right?
Yeah, I think there's maturity at every one of those levels. I think the way that Idira is broken up in those three categories is, I think, is actually a really good way to think about it. I do think when we look at it from a decision and process flow of maturity, there are a lot of subcategories, but they all kind of feed into those three. So I think those are solid, kind of high level buckets to consider things. That discover piece, and that control piece in particular. I think we can fulfill that discover piece pretty well. I think there's always going to be room for improvement. Even today, I know Jos had mentioned kind of on the people side, and I agree. Like, we're kind of good on the technology side, but the people using it, the people trying to use these capabilities, following these regulations, that's where it falls apart, right? We still have organizations today struggling with that because they aren't doing the things they should, or they don't have the capabilities, or they're in their own way. I see the same thing happening on the discovery of the non-humans. Is we in organizations are either scoping things too little, or they're trying to put too many block and tackling and bureaucratic process in the way of that discovery, or they're still arguing to who really should be the accountable party, and not having these discussions and strategy. It's very important to have a strategy of this as you go into that discovery. But then we get into that control, and I do think the capabilities for control are solid, but then we move into a little bit lesser of a realm of maturity, where what kind of control? Is it control at the prompt? Is it control within policy? Is it control around your MCP server? Is it control from a service to service communication? Is it a one to many? Is it a many to one type scenario with agents? Do we allow agents to propagate? These are things that we don't have the solid frameworks, but they're coming. So you need to have a proper strategy and define what's best for your organization and what you're comfortable with. So there's a lot of work in that control. It's not as simple as we can control it. Then we move into that governance, because once we make the decisions on the control, that governance becomes so important. So I'm only saying that to say is, don't rely on just the discovery, but don't also kind of get in your own way for the discovery. You really do need to have proper strategy as to what's in scope. Just like we have today, when you have a PAM project, we're talking service accounts and all that. Let's make sure everything is truly in scope. Everything is privileged in your environment, especially in the non-human world, just different levels. So let's come to that conclusion. But then don't jump straight to governance, like a lot of these vendors are trying to get you to do. Have the right discussions at that control level. Have that strategy, have that discussion around control, then design a purpose-built process, which is going to be back-ended by technology. And this is where Palo was going in one of their sidebar sessions. There was a side session on this where they were talking about that flow of maturity towards governance. And it's not an all or one. You're doing all these at the same time. You're moving from discovery to control to governance almost in parallel, but within a phased approach. It's not entire environments. It's literally down at an agent level or a process or team or service level.
Awesome. Jos, any thoughts to add there?
Yeah, I think it's the discover, control, and govern. I think that's from Palo. And what they mean with it is they've got quite advanced tooling. They already had tooling within Palo, and now with Idira they've got some more tooling to do discovery. of human identities, non-human identities. And they try to automate with AI to protect or to control as much as possible. So that it's not that you have to, if you find a service account, for example, nowadays it is manual labor, manual work to either set an authentication path or to vault it or do whatever with it. And then they automate everything with AI. So that whatever you see, you can just select it, protect it, and it's theirs now, it's controlled. And then there's the governance loop. And that you make it a circle. You know, that's I think why we have a governance loop. And I think a lot of organizations, it's the other way around. It starts with governance. And it starts with, for example, if you have a new application, and if the organization is allowed to just pop up new applications, and you've got no application intake process, for example, in how you do your application, how you create new service accounts, that with every service account there is an owner, with everything that you've got the process in place, you govern the different processes based on your policy. If you don't do that, then it will always be technology that will have to do discover and have to do the protect and have to do the governance. So I think an organization can improve a lot even without the technology. And I'm not underestimating the technology, because discovery is, I think, the most important thing. But the government part at the end, that should be in the beginning. And you should start with governing your organization, governing your processes, make sure that your change management processes are in place, make sure your life cycle is in place. And then you don't have to fully rely on the discovery. You know, then your discovery will, you won't find that many things anymore in time, instead of always finding the things that you could have known.
Very good. Well, let's jump real quick just in specifics to the roadmap that they presented themselves. In these areas, obviously, you just touched on all of them that they talked about. From what they presented from a roadmap, let's just get your take on that. Is it the right direction? Is it fast enough? Is it too fast in certain areas? What's your take on the roadmap presentations that were given at the conference?
Those are, so I definitely have some interesting opinions on roadmaps in general. I don't put a lot of concrete faith in the roadmap as I see it. I look at that more as, anytime I see a roadmap, especially a product roadmap, I look at that more as a story or a narrative of where we want to go, what we think is needed. And I don't put the concrete as to when it's coming, when I'm going to get it, and the value that it promises. And I think that level of skepticism, most people should have at some level, maybe not as strong as I do, but at some level of seeing these things, because market shift, priorities shift, things shift, and things impact roadmaps all the time. So I want to put that out there first. The roadmap that they presented, I think, sets the solid narrative in a good direction. I think the industry is still going to decide if that's the right direction over time, because that's what happens all the time, right? Not one method is always the right way. There might be multiple ways to do this. There may be multiple directions. So I do think the direction they have is solid. It is good. It is in a good direction. I do think others will maybe contest it and maybe turn things around and do things in different orders. And I think only time in the market will shake that out.
So is there anything specific from your perspective on the roadmap that was presented that jumped out at you one way or another?
Yeah, but I did for a bit. And I fully agree that there's most organizations, they can't differentiate between what is our vision and what is our roadmap, and they mix it up.
Yep.
But luckily, even with during the Impact in Austin, they also show the more concrete short-term roadmap and long-term roadmap. And of course, things can happen, and they always start with a disclaimer. But it's good to see, and I think of a lot of organizations that are already using CyberArk or now Idira, they are happy to see improvements because they have voted for changes. And they see that changes granted and changes back on the roadmap. And that's a good feeling. You've got influence, and where the tool should head to make sure that it aligns with the need in your organization. But in general, if you hover above all the roadmaps, I saw quite a distinguish between two types. One of them is the more modern, roadmap, modernizing, and it was a bit of a high level, was more of a vision than a really roadmap, and that's on the SaaS development, the Priv Cloud development, and how they're going to handle AI, how the new dashboard is going to look like, the control center, and how they're going to do, discover and the control and, and the govern part, and it's all in there. And then there's the self-hosted roadmap, and there's still a lot of organizations are using CyberArk in a self-hosted version for all good reasons. And you see this the self-hosted roadmap developing more as an infrastructure protection mechanism. So it wasn't really handling all the agents and all the cloud and it was more, we improved our privileged threat analytics. We now have MFA caching in our PSM. It was really the short-term, really close roadmap. And on the long term, there were a few other items that are good, but they're still in the infrastructure. So that was something that I really saw. And I think that organizations that have a self-hosted environment for high security reasons, for their protecting their OT environments, or for whatever reason, they should really think on maybe we should create a hybrid environment to protect my more modern environment. So if I want to protect my clouds and my SaaS applications and everything, we should make our security environment hybrid instead of relying on our self-hosted infrastructure. I think that's something that stood out for me during the impact.
Yeah. I'm going to rephrase your question, Ryan, and then answer it a little differently. So, because what the question wasn't, but it was what on the roadmap were you excited about? And that's a different question for me. And I'll be super quick with this because I'm a little bit of folks that know me know I get excited about things that most people wouldn't even pay attention to. But that's just who I am. But there's a philosophy of the human involvement with AI, and that philosophy is in three stages of maturity, which is human in the loop, human on the loop, and then human out of the loop. And I saw the makings on the roadmap for the long-term roadmap to be able to help us see where those three things exist, and maybe even help us have the capability of strategizing as to where our involvement with AI could be. I don't think Palo is going to solve that for us, but I did see the makings of that. And again, I highly recommend if anyone is listening for them to just, if they don't do research on anything else for AI and you don't want to dig into anything else, Palo, just research that concept of in the loop, on the loop, out of the loop. Understand what that means. And I think it will start prompting a lot of valuable discussions in your organization.
Fantastic. Great points. Thank you both on that one. Let's shift real quick to another topic that was also covered there, and that's the zero standing privilege. What's your take on what was announced and what's actually happening around the industry in that space?
Yeah. So if we want to talk about around the industry versus just in the Palo space, I think the answer is quite a bit more direct. And there's a difference between zero standing privilege, just-in-time access, and what is now zero secret. So there's a zero secret process as well. All of these things are actually very practical. Some of them have been around for years and have been leveraged for years. The practicality of putting them into an organization is also very practical. However, organizations are at different levels of maturity and understanding. They have a PAM solution and they've been vaulting and that's what they're used to. That's what they know. And that's maybe all they think is possible. And getting to those discussions of what could be and can be is actually very eye-opening. Zero standing privilege and the capability of being able to elevate that access within an application and not even vault the account, but actually literally have no privilege and elevate that has been around for years. And the capability has been years and it's been proven. So the technology is not the issue with these capabilities. Just in time is obviously probably even easier to obtain. And I won't go into the details of all the difference of these because that's a whole lecture in itself. However, the zero secret, especially if you're doing Aspire architecture and leveraging SPIFFE, definitely something that's possible, something that's been real within workflows for a while. It's not a new protocol, it's newer, but it's not new. Where the problem is, where the practicality is, from that technical perspective, it's there. The practicality of implementing that within an organization that doesn't even know these are possibilities, or they won't get out of their own way from a decision perspective, or maybe they have such legacy solutions or archaic solutions that are in the environment are going to be stumbling blocks. That's where the rubber kind of like doesn't just meet the road. It kind of like slams on the brakes and does a giant, black mark across, because they're like, wait a minute, this is new, this is different. Why they don't grasp it. However, the organizations that do finally grasp it, just to put this disclaimer out there, they never have, and I don't think they ever will get to a ZSP model or a zero secret model for everything. There will still always be a use case where they will need to be able to have some sort of secret vaulted and controlled. That will always be the case at some level. There are a very few handful of organizations that I've worked with or at least have had connection with, that could not doing work for directly, that actually have obtained this for over 50% of all their not only privileged accounts, but even standard accounts where there is no standing privilege. It just doesn't exist. So I'm putting that out there. It's real, but it's not the technology that's the problem. It's, again, the adoption of it.
Got it. Jos?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree again. You can't have everything always. We've been modernizing PEM environments for the last, maybe 5-6 years, maybe even longer, and that we're making them hybrid. You've got some accounts are using zero standing privileges, some are just in time, some are vaulted. Depends on the use cases, and you have the environment that can handle all the use cases. So I think it's not new, and I think the risk is that how do you call it? There are organizations that do not know the capabilities of their solutions, because like CyberArk and now Palo, but all of them, they are all SailPoint, HP, whatever solution. They're all innovating in their products. So there's a lot of product innovation. And if you don't follow the product innovation, you don't know what the tool brings. And if you have an enormous amount of tools, you can't follow all the product innovations. So you're not using the maximum capability of a lot of tools. Sometimes you need someone else to explain to you what your tool actually is capable of. If you never update your computer, never update your Word, never update your Excel, you're working with very old versions. And you're missing a lot of the capabilities that are, sometimes I'm an Apple user, some are quite handy. Some I don't use, but a lot of them I do use. But if you don't know it, and you're not, there's no one to tell you what the capabilities are and how to improve it, you won't improve it. So we speak a lot of organizations, and we just explain that the solution they already have is absolutely capable of zero standing privileges or just-in-time access, and you can combine it. You can combine it with your IGA tool to manage your policies. There are a lot of things that they can already accomplish, but are just not aware of.
Okay, very good. Very good. Any other follow-ups on that topic before we jump on?
There's a statement that I like, and I agree. Yeah, there's those that don't know the capabilities of their tools, but tools, in my opinion, don't actually fix anybody's problems. They're not the solution. They're the means to the solution. They're not the solution. Because again, the statement I like is a fool with a tool is still a fool. Right. And it's not to pick on an individual or anyone's intelligence. It's just to mean that you can have the tool in the wrong hands or with the wrong understanding of how to use the tool. You're never going to get the value out of it. So it's very important to understand a tool is not going to fix your problem. You have to be able to use the tool appropriately to solve your problems, to get efficiency, to get gains. And if you don't understand that, then I think you're kind of chasing a little bit of a pipe dream to assume the tool is just going to take care of it for you. So take a step back, educate your environment in any means necessary as to what you have and what those tools are capable of doing, but then also really understand and question, what do we want to do with are these the right tools?
Exactly. Very good. Well said. Let's do one more quick topic here. Post quantum. So that also obviously it's a bigger focus right now. Do you expect improvements in this space from Idira?
I do. I think there's a lot that Idira is looking at, but actually it's the larger Palo environment that I think is looking at this. There are, I think, also a lot of changes happening. So I want to be very clear that when we talk post-quantum resiliency and post-quantum readiness, a lot of people today, and probably rightfully so, jump to PQC or post-quantum cryptography. Cryptography is actually only one piece of being truly quantum resilient and quantum ready. It's the most practical piece, which is why I think it's probably the best place to start. However, it's not the end. There's a lot more to prepare for. And we look at some of the dates, especially NIST, who put out, the approved logarithms, the FIPS logarithms to be able to replace RSA, and putting the 2030 date. And then you look at the potential of that 2030 date moving up with advances with, quantum computing in general, especially with Willow and programs like Echoes and things like that, and showing the capability is there. It's not in the hands of other people, but capability is there. Capability is coming. I think organizations, especially Palo, are taking that very seriously. And if we just kind of look at the chain of events of CyberArk, acquiring Venafi, and then Palo acquiring CyberArk, Venafi is obviously part of that toolkit now, and being able to take and reissue certificates at the device level, like Apollo devices, just keeping them not only live for lifecycle for like a CLM process, but issuing a quantum resilient cert is the first line of defense. And if you have these devices at the edge, you've now created a boundary in which there's resiliency at a cryptography level for quantum. And I think that's the direction they're heading. It does not solve the issue internally, your environment, but if you at least got that boundary, you're moving the needle forward a little bit. This is another topic I get very excited about and dive into. And I can go quite a few angles, but just to answer the question though, is I think Palo is not only planning, but actively making progressions, making it easier, more obtainable. I think the industry is starting to bring this in conversation more and more. This is something, a flag was raised a decade ago, if not more, as far as the need for this. And then the closer and closer we get to 2030, the bigger and bigger it's becoming in the conversation. 5 years ago, I was talking about maybe some PQC stuff and people were like, oh, well, whatever, that's cool. And now they're asking me about it and I'm not even having to bring it up. And I think the next year in particular, 2028, people are going to realize that deadline is around the corner. And I think people might enter a little bit of a panic mode. So there's got to be answers out there. Palo knows that. They're moving towards that as well as others.
Very good. Jos?
Yeah, I think organizations like Palo and more of them, they are absolutely focusing on one of the most important things is the discovery, making sure that you know what you have, what kind of certificates do I have, can I create a life cycle for my certificates, can I automate it so I don't have to change things manually. But the topic, like you said, is a lot bigger than that. And there's also the application sides. And I think there are still too many organizations that don't know the impact of changing your cryptography, your algorithms in your application. Most of the banks, they are still using legacy tools that are using really old protocols, but they still have to use it because the application can't change anymore. There's nobody that change the application. So they have to use the unsecure protocols and do all ways around it to secure that unsecure protocol. And I think this is the time to make sure that not only technically you discover your environment, but also look at your tools and look at your applications. Can I change my application? Can I change the algorithms in my application to use modern protocols, modern algorithms? And if they don't, how can I change them? Because changing an application, even with the AI, the nowadays AI tools and the coding that's made it easier, can be really, really troublesome. Can take a year, maybe 2 years to change and to test it. And now we all talk about 2030 is the date that the quantum will be released, and there will be a big bang, and all the computers will stop working because we've got the millennium cards in it and everything. I don't know if that is the case. I don't know if we're going to do 2030 or 2032 or maybe even 2040. But it is going to happen. Everything we've created as a human, our videos or whatever invention we made, the phones, your mobile used to be this big. And nowadays it is really small and fits in your pocket. It will innovate, and it will go faster and faster and faster. The fact that we have a quantum computer, that is something to worry about. And then maybe it's not 2030, maybe it's a bit later, maybe it's a bit sooner. Start knowing what you have to make sure that you are ready for whatever the date is. I think that's the most important message that we can give the organizations.
Yeah, I think that's very key, that you be ready for whatever the date is. But I if people are listening and they're not familiar with this, I just want to make sure that I do my due diligence and put this out there, which is although I do agree the date is coming at some point, but today it actually doesn't matter what that date is because regulations are changing to say be ready by this date. Cybersecurity assurance is saying show proof by this date, and that date is going to flux, but still, if regulators and fines are going to come down because you're not ready, even if quantum isn't readily available by that time, what does it matter if you still have your fines and things that you have to meet? And people, and it does sound like a daunting thing, and the daunting piece is what Jos actually brought out. It's the retooling of your applications, but we have to go all the way back and understand that this is based on an operating model that's existed. You know, we have PKI, and obviously that's your trust model. That's that's where trust is built. But then you have your CLM components. That's your operating model. So focus on your CLM, get your PKI in check, have proper lifecycle over certs, and the technology piece of reissuing a new cert and changing that logarithm is not the difficult part. But let's get the operating model with the type of search you're doing today, at least moving forward, and have proper governance and lifecycle. Because then when we get to the point of needing to reissue the logarithms, then we can piecemeal it as needed, even though it'd be ideal just to hit the button and send it out. But piecemeal it as needed, application by application, because that is where the duration, that is where the headache is going to be, because there's going to be retooling, redevelopment to allow this. But you cannot get to the ability to even put that certificate out there if you don't have proper mature CLM operating controls and capabilities. And you really aren't going to have that unless you're going to build your proper trust model off your PKI infrastructure. It's still going to be the PKI general structure and form that this is going to live on and breathe on and be pushed out. So I just want to put that out there. I think if you're listening and you start doing some research, and you'll see all these dates. Look at your industry, look at your regulators, look at what you need to apply for. What are they saying you need to do? And we could do a whole workshop if anyone's interested on just how to look at that world, because that's important. That's the important piece today.
Perfect. Gentlemen, thank you. This has been a fantastic conversation up to this point. I think one of the words I'm going to take away from this is what you just mentioned there, DJ, was daunting. Like, we are living in a time where this stuff is changing at a rate that is unprecedented. And the knowledge to put it all together is also truly daunting. So what advice, just to wrap this up, would you give to those who are listening going, I don't understand half of what they're talking about, and I need to, and how am I going to approach this? What's your last kind of takeaway? How do I approach this when it's all feels so overwhelming and daunting?
Yeah, my first bit of advice is don't panic. This is overwhelming and daunting for many people. You're not alone. Many organizations are in a very similar boat. Now, that's not an excuse to not do something, but it is hopefully somewhat comforting to know that you're not alone in that realm. But there are means to help educate, help prepare, help get ready. And all of this sounds, again, daunting. And it's not that you have to take all this on today and have it ready and done for tomorrow. But my word of advice is reach out to those that can help and be able to create an actionable journey plan and blueprint of how to get there. Strategize how to get these things done. And focus on what's really obtainable today and prioritize what's needed today and build towards what you need for tomorrow. And that sounds kind of cliche to say. However, if we simply just keep our heads in the sand and say that's a lot, and then you kind of move on with your day to day and we ignore it, we are going to into a realm where fear and panic is probably going to hit us at some point. But we're not there yet. Don't fear, don't panic today. Strategize, look at what you have. I think Jos has mentioned this many times around discovery and the importance. That is so important. I can't agree more. You need to just know what you have and then strategize from there. And there's those that can help you. We do workshops. There's other forms of education that are out there. Find someone who understands what's going on. And just lean on them to help you get those baby steps, those actionable steps moving. And then the strategy will start to reveal itself in some good conversations. And again, just don't panic, take on a little bit at a time and get that ball moving, that snowball, and eventually it will grow and will be impactful.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think we've been talking about it for a really, really long time because a lot of things are happening. And I've been in security for almost 30 years now, and there's always been a lot of things happening in security. And it's always important, and there's always a new threat, and there's always a nation state actor, and there's the script kiddie, and there's the whatever there is, there's always a new threat. I think this time is different. If you see the new capabilities with AI, your household capabilities. You take a picture of your fridge and it prepares and it gives you a recipe on what to cook that evening. It was unimaginable a couple of years ago. Same goes for the threats. If you look like Mythos, what it provides on threat level, it is a different ballgame. So if security isn't a boardroom topic at the moment, this is a good time to start. Because it is a threat for an organization if this is not a boardroom topic. They have to budget, they have to rethink their security, or like DJ mentioned, make sure what you have and create a strategy in how you're going to change it. Because it needs changing. You can't have the next 10 years the same security environment you had today. Then it just can't happen. You're not there anymore. And I think if you're not there anymore, that's a boardroom topic.
Well said. Well said. Very good. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Great conversation today. And we'll catch all of you on the next time around. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.